I'd like to welcome in now Senior Fellow at Defense Priorities and host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Always great to see you, Lieutenant Colonel. So right now, of course, all eyes are on this face-to-face meeting happening at Mar-a-Lago. We are expecting cameras to be allowed in there. We'll get a live look. But before we talk about what these two leaders will discuss, talk about the significance of Israel's prime minister traveling to President Trump's Florida golf resort for this meeting today.
Well, I think that it really underscores how important it is for Benjamin Netanyahu that he doesn't want to wait until Trump gets back to his to the Oval Office. He doesn't want to wait for anything. Apparently, that's a little bit concerning to me. That I hope that there's not some kind of urgency in terms of action going on, because especially in a lot of boisterous comments coming from Iran about being at this all-out war, et cetera, that they're ready. They're now much stronger than they were before, because that's some pretty cocky comments that one wonders if it's backed up by some reason for there to be confidence, or if they have some knowledge about anything that Israel may do. But this is one of the things I said right at the beginning when Trump says that he ended this war, this 12-day war. I'm like, no, the war never ended. All it did is they stopped shooting because it was in the interest of both parties at that time to do so, that 12-day war. But none of the issues at all were resolved on either side of the line there. So that's why I've been concerned about this, and now my level of concern is a little bit higher. And it looks to me like Netanyahu's trying to get authorization or even permission from the White House to actually take some action potentially against Iran. And I certainly hope that doesn't come.
I do want to talk to you about Iran. There are so many things to talk about. We know that the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is expected to push back hard against any attempt by the Trump administration to try to move on to this next phase 2 of this very fragile ceasefire plan. Israel wants assurances that Hamas will be disarmed and that Gaza will be demilitarized before any further steps are taken. From your perspective, Lieutenant Colonel, are those goals that can actually be achieved?
No, they're not. I mean, this is another thing I've been saying on your network from the very beginning of this war. I mean, all the way back into October of 2023, when after the terrible terrorist attack by Hamas against Israel, and then their reaction after that, I kept saying over and over that they are basically setting the foundation for long-term instability because they went in with a heavy hand instead of doing something just against the people who committed the terrorist attack. And so now then, because so much widespread destruction has been done throughout the 2 years since that time, so many innocent people were killed as a result. Now then, you have created so many more people antagonistic to Israel. It's not going to matter whether you call them Hamas or whether they come up with some new title. If you don't give the Palestinian people some kind of reason to have a future and a hope that they feel that there is benefit to work with Israel in something, you're never going to get them to just go to ground and cow their shoulders and say, yes, whatever you're told, we'll just do it and be quiet. They're not going to do that. And if that's the objective, all we're doing is guaranteeing a new round of war at some point.
And we know both sides agree to this, but the second phase of this, Lieutenant Colonel, calls for this creation of a so-called international stabilization force, which is supposed to take over policing the Strip. How do you think that will work?
Yeah, that's will it work? Maybe that's a better question, because again, you have to have the current concurrence and agreement by both sides. Anytime you have a peacekeeping force, you have to first have peace to keep. Otherwise, it's a peace enforcement mission, and nobody, I imagine, is going to sign up for a peace enforcement mechanism. So that means that you're going to have Israel and the Palestinian people, by whatever political entity is going to be governing the Palestinian side. They're going to have to both agree to something, and that means that Israel's going to have to agree to something, and they don't want to agree to anything. They just want to dictate terms, and I'm sorry, it won't work that way. And if they stay with that hard position, then this is not going to get solved, and it's going to continue festering.
I do want to talk about Ukraine. I want to talk about China and Taiwan, but before we move on, let's talk about what we've heard from Iran's president, now saying that he's in a full-scale war with not only Israel, Europe, but also the U.S. What do you think about the timing of these statements? What do you think that means?
Yeah, that is a curious thing about the timing. That is important. He claimed in there that they have rebuilt a lot of their military capacity, that they are now, quote, stronger than they were during the 12-day version of this war. And look, there's some evidence that suggests that he may be right, because we know that despite what it was claimed about what was hit in Iran, and there was a lot hit in Iran, there was a lot that wasn't hit in Iran too, and that includes their ballistic missile production capacity, much of which was already underground for the expectation of exactly what happened, that they would suffer a lot of airstrikes, so they wanted something that was below the ground, probably some of it in secret locations that was beyond the reach of that. So those have probably remained and have now accelerated. And there's lots of evidence that suggests that is the case. And we do know that Iran was able to deal substantial damage to get through the integrated air defense systems of the Israeli side and cause severe damage throughout Israel. That would be expected to return and maybe even expand should they go to war again. And that's another thing I think that Netanyahu is want to talk to Trump about, that he wants to get more robust air defense from a number of different spots, and he's going to need it. So I think my guess is that Iran is a little bit more confident and maybe even a little cocky, thinking that they have the ability to really reach out and hit Israel, and is now not so much at being afraid as saying, we can really reach out and hurt you if you go down this path.
All right, so I want to pivot now and talk about the war in Ukraine, because, of course, there was another big meeting just yesterday, President Trump meeting with Ukraine's president. Security guarantees and land really seem to be the big sticking points here. Do you think progress was made, keeping in mind, of course, that President Trump had that phone call today with Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, no progress was made at all. I mean, and this goes back to the Anchorage, Alaska meeting, where there was a lot of ballyhoo and a lot of red carpets and flyovers and stuff, but nothing came out of that at all. Russia's position was very clearly laid out. Ukraine's position was laid out, and nobody budged at all after that one. There were no bilateral and trilateral meetings. Now then we have this here. First it was Trump's 28-point peace plan. Then it was Zelensky's 20-point peace plan, neither one of which addressed some of the major issues that the Russians have, and they have been adamant that they are not going to budge on any of their points that they have, namely demilitarization, denazification, and the territorial acquisition of all 4 of the borders of the territories they annexed in 2022, and no NATO. Of course, that's one of the primary one. And those weren't even mentioned inside those 20-point peace plans. And there's no willingness, according to what Zelensky said on Fox News last night, to even surrender the Donbass area, much less Zaporizhia and Kherson. So based on that, there is no reason to think that Russia is going to give in on anything, because they don't have to. They have the military power, the industrial capacity, financial capacity, all the things that you need, and the manpower to compel eventually compliance on the other side, and our side doesn't have that leverage.
All right, so saying that Russia doesn't have to concede, just in the past hour or so, Russia made this claim that Ukraine tried to attack Vladimir Putin's residence. Now, Ukraine is saying that is not true. Zelensky denies it, saying it's a complete lie, and that Russia is saying this only as a way to get away from peace talks. Now, that is, of course, after more deadly Russian strikes in Kyiv over the weekend. As you said, many don't believe Putin is very serious about peace. However, as we go into this new year, there are predictions that 2026 could bring some economic challenges for Putin's war in Ukraine. Does that possibility, do you think, put more pressure on Vladimir Putin?
No, there's no pressure on Putin. It could well get more complicated for the Russian side on the financial side. Maybe, but maybe not. But what we have seen from the Russians throughout history is that they can suffer a lot of privation should they have the need to. And so far, they haven't had any. They are much, much better financially speaking than the entire West is. I mean, you look at what France and Germany, especially UK, they're all struggling financially, but you see they're able to continue their war support to Ukraine. And so Russia has the ability, they have levers to pull, just like we do when we have economic downturns. If anybody has any hope that that's going to somehow stop Russia, I mean, you would have to have the complete and total collapse of the Russian economy, and even that might not do it. So there's no prospect, in my view, in the foreseeable future that that's going to have any impact on the front line. But you do see that Russia has increasing. They have just taken four major cities and towns in just the last 72 hours or so that they have been taken for a long time, and they keep moving to the west. Ukraine doesn't have enough troops to stop that, and so you can't just keep going on indefinitely without enough troops or without enough ammunition, and Russia has enough of all of those for the foreseeable future.
All right, and keeping in mind that there are always things going on all across the globe, what is your reaction to China's military now staging drills today around Taiwan as what they are calling a warning to external forces?
It's another. I think this is the third time they've had a big naval blockade type operation of this scale, and of course they've done it before on two other occasions. So now this is the third one. They're constantly doing things with overflights and going through the ADIZ, the Air Defense Identification Zone that Taiwan claims is its own, et cetera. They've had all kinds of naval ships that drive in around there. So this is nothing new. What we don't know is if this is just the next one in line, but that China is saying we are deadly serious about this. If you ever declare independence, and the Taiwanese authorities have been making a lot more of these kinds of allusions to independence than the previous administrations have, which is causing part of this tension to rise. And of course, that's on top of the U.S. given this announcing this $11 billion weapons package, the biggest ever. So that's making China not very happy. But what you're seeing here, in my view, is that they are continuing to rehearse and refine their job, that if they decide they want to take Taiwan, they're now going to be a lot more capable of doing it. Of course, we never know if they may say, all right, we're going to do a big exercise here, and then all of a sudden that turns into an actual operation. That's happened many times in military history. It doesn't look like it's going to happen this time, or at least it hasn't so far. But their capacity is no kidding. It is very, very capable, and if they want to take this island, I think there's any number of ways that they could do it, and I doubt very seriously we could stop them.
Oh, wow. Yeah, lots to keep an eye on. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thank you as always.
Always my pleasure.